Hey guys, welcome back to episode 2 of Sex Ed. So we were meant to go up yesterday. I pre-record everything a few weeks in advance, and then I edit it, and then it comes up in a scheduled post whenever it's ready. I managed to delete all of my last episodes, so here we are again. Hopefully won't do it to this one. So my cat has decided to join us today. She may get kicked out halfway through if she's not well behaved, but she wanted to stay with me. So I've had an amazing amount of feedback come through from last week's episode. Can't thank you enough to all those that have watched it, taken the time to message me back, comment on it. I have opened it up now so you can search it without the link from my page. You can just search Sex Ed by Zan. I've managed to put a few safety stops in place so that this remains a safe place for everybody. I had it just linked from my account just while I set it all up to be safe for young people. And for everyone to be welcome here, no matter what kind of demographic you fit into or don't fit into. So yeah, now you can search me and you'll get taken straight to that Sex Ed page, and then you'll see my list of videos. My first one's still up there. There's a link on my page to that if you wanted to watch that first, if you've just joined us. So we're talking consent today. And consent is a huge part of even the very start of a sexual relationship, or someone wanting to go into a sexual relationship. You need to know how to consent, how to gain consent, how to give consent, that kind of thing. And I think that it's a really important topic to go over, and that's why I have decided to do it so early on. Consent comes in many forms, so I'm not just talking about sex, I'm talking about any kind of interaction with another human, really. You have to consent to touching somebody, to being in somebody's space, that kind of thing. And so, yeah, consent is a huge part of sex education. So, consent is a word that pretty much everybody's heard. Usually it's from a teacher at your school or something like that, consent from your doctor, consent from a parent to go on a school trip, that kind of thing. But obviously it comes into sex education as well, and a very important part for keeping everybody safe when it comes to that kind of thing. So what is consent in sex education regards? It is described as that any sexual touching without consent is considered a crime. So grabbing someone's bum, touching somebody's leg, grabbing a boob, anything without consenting first, it's a crime. So you can't touch anyone sexually without consenting first, or you've committed a crime. So I think that's a really important thing to put into play. It is a crime when you don't gain consent from somebody to touch them or do anything physical with them, or to send them pictures. You need consent. You can't send unsolicited pictures of yourself that may offend somebody without consenting first. So what do we mean when we're talking about consent? Talking or expressing your words, your actions to make a decision. So having to hear consent from somebody is important. Having to read their body language for consent is important. And for all those unspoken signs that they may be giving you from their body, that all needs to be expressed to gain consent. So there's 4 kind of ways to gain consent, and I thought that they're a really good way to make sure that you're keeping yourself safe and keeping your friends safe and keeping people in your community safe, or making sure that somebody feels safe in your company as well. So the first one, clear. Is the message that somebody is giving you a clear and direct message? Can you clearly see that they're consenting to whatever you're asking of them? I want to go on a date, I want to kiss you, I want to have sex with you, whatever that is. Have you heard them say clearly, yes, I consent to this? The next thing is coherent. Are they coherent enough to make that decision? If they're not, then you can't even ask it. Somebody that isn't, that may be intoxicated, may have been in some sort of trauma, maybe intellectually or physically handicapped, they're not coherent enough to make a decision to consent in a sexual manner. The next one is, are they willing? So this is, if you've got to this point, that can happen. Messages can be sort of not that direct, that clear. You could get to the point of willingness. It is quite clear when somebody isn't willing. And if they're back at the first one, at the second point, coherent, they may be willing, but they might not be coherent. So then you would go to assuming that if they're not coherent, they're not willing. They're only willing if they're incoherent and they can't actually make that decision for themselves because they passed out or aren't completely coherent. So willingness. So you can't psychologically manipulate somebody. You can't physically threaten somebody. You cannot manipulate anyone. You can't talk anyone round. That's not willingness. If you have to convince somebody of it, they're not willing. So you need to assure that they've been willing at every step of the way, as well as that those first two steps have come in before the willingness. Clear decision, coherent decision, willing decision. And then the fourth one is ongoing. So consent needs to be ongoing. You can't simply say to somebody, oh, but they said yes to having sex with me one time. Every time needs to be asked. You can't expect a decision. That's like me saying, when I was 6, I decided not to brush my teeth anymore because I didn't think it worked. Having grown up, learning that teeth brushing keeps your teeth from going rotten, those kind of things, getting fillings in them, the dentist wouldn't take my 6-year-old assumption of I don't need to clean my teeth as word, as law. He knows that now at 33, I can make a decision that I need to brush my teeth. That's the same thing. Just because you're married to somebody, just because they're your girlfriend, they're your boyfriend, they're your partner, whatever is going on, just because they've been in that relationship or in that situation before, it doesn't mean that they consent to it every time. So talking through that talk with somebody each time is really important. And it doesn't have to be a really mechanical kind of way if they're your partner or wife and you've been with them for a long time. But it's important to make sure that they are wanting to be intimate with you every single time. Because they may not feel like it, they may not feel well, they may have had a stressful day, they may be feeling anxious. All these things come into play when you're deciding to be intimate with somebody. So those 4 things again, clear, are they clearly making that decision? Are they coherent enough to make that decision? Are they willing to make that decision? And is that decision ongoing? All these things need to be taken into consideration. So a lot of the time on the internet, and through social media pages, we can lose that consent. And that is sort of the world we live in at the moment. Did they want that picture sent to them, me to send one to them to send one back? Am I forcing them? Am I nagging them? That kind of thing. With that distance of computers and that screen, and being on the internet has kind of opened up a can of worms in terms of talking consent. So there's a huge amount of information going on around child sex trafficking at the moment, and that's something that I will definitely talk about down the track a little bit, and what I sort of think about how much is true and that kind of thing. But it's a very clear difference between somebody that is grooming a child and somebody that is there asking for consent from another adult. So what is grooming? Grooming is when somebody older preys on somebody that isn't mentally old enough or actually old enough to make a decision around being intimate with somebody, sending them pictures that you normally wouldn't, that kind of thing. And that is coming from somebody of power, somebody that is older, somebody that can mentally attack that person or hold them down or manipulate them into consenting. That's a whole nother issue, and trying to keep people safe around the internet, and grooming is a huge reason of why I'm here and why we do sex education. If we all have this information earlier on, and what the signs are, and what consent is, and what grooming is, and what is manipulation, and what is healthy, if we have a platform for this, then hopefully this is going to decrease. A lot of the ways to intervene that I'll talk about in a moment can be done by you as a friend or as a sister or someone, in a household that you see maybe being groomed. They can be intervened the same as if somebody is trying to force consent on somebody. So we'll talk about that soon. But consenting is somebody, you can only ask for consent from somebody that is of, the same maturity as you, same intelligence as you, that kind of thing. To expect it of somebody that isn't equipped to deal with that as it moves into grooming. And yeah, as I mentioned, that's a whole new can of worms, which we will talk about in a few more episodes' time. So consenting means that the person involved are able to make this decision for themselves. So like I said, going through those 4 options of gaining consent will lead to that. So why is consent important? So I think a huge thing for young people around consent is low self-esteem. We've had huge rise in mental illness in the last 10-15 years. I know that when I first was diagnosed with depression at early teens, 13, 14, I didn't know anyone else that had mental illness. No one talked about it. It wasn't something that was spoken of. Now it's, one of our hugest health issues that we're still struggling to get under control, in my opinion. So we have to consider that a lot of people struggle with mental illness of some kind, depression, anxiety, OCD, personality disorders, a million different mental illnesses, but most of them come with some sense of low self-esteem. So when you're struggling to love yourself, low self-esteem is something that comes in really early on. And I think that makes it really hard to consent when you don't even know how to stick up for yourself in any circumstance, let alone an intimate one. So consent is really important, because sometimes it takes a little bit for somebody to be able to speak up for themselves and say no, or say this has gone too far, or I don't feel comfortable with this. So having those 4 levels of consent allows somebody to have the time to talk, to use actions, that kind of thing. So that's why it's really important. Another reason is that I see a lot of young people wanting to keep up. So I remember back in high school, you assume that everybody's sort of done a little bit more than you. They've kissed a boy before you. They've, that kind of thing, got intimate with somebody before you. And I can 100% guarantee you that everybody's making it up. No one has any idea what's going on generally in high school, in a lot of regards. But also into that, when you leave high school, 18, 19, 20, I still don't know a lot about being intimate and being sexual with somebody, because I've been in a lot of relationships. I haven't ventured a lot, and so my relationships have taken up longer time. I've got to know one certain person, and having worked with women and in the health sector for a long time now, I can say that there's still lots for me to learn. So for anyone to pretend that they know it all at 14, they're making it up. So this is another reason why consent's really important, is that we can get caught up in thinking we haven't got quite far enough, or haven't done as much as our friends, and as sexually active as our friends, and that doesn't matter. It doesn't make up your worth in the world. It doesn't get you anywhere in life. Taking your time and going at your pace, which may be quicker or faster, or slower than friends, and that's okay. But just being true to you and what's inside is a huge thing to learn when you're young, and I wish I learned it earlier. And kicking off from that, trying to get somebody to like you, you may sort of end up in a situation that you move too quickly, that kind of thing, because you wanted the person to like you. And hey, we've all been there in some regards. We've wanted, toddlers make cute faces at their mothers because they know their mum will like it. So then their mum gives them lots of love. We all do it. It's human nature to gravitate towards people that like us, but you don't need to pretend to make people like you. There's a million people out there that will like you just for you, and also see the world the same as, or similar to you. They see that they want to wait, or they want to explore early on, or they have no interest in kissing the opposite sex. They want to kiss the same sex, or there's people that will move with you, and finding those people are more important than finding boyfriends, girlfriends, sexual partners. Finding your community will make you feel a million times better than convincing somebody that you might be good to kiss. And then the other one is why consent is important, is that somebody might not understand the situation they're in. We all communicate differently. I'm a real doer. I talk with my hands. Everyone has to watch me do this while I'm just saying, hey, this is how you boil an egg. Over here, over here, over here. So it can be quite confusing for people. They're like, whoa, that's an awesome story Zan's telling there. Look at her hands. But often they can't actually get the message that's coming out of my mouth because I'm moving around so much. I can't have somebody read something to me. It just goes in one ear and out the other. There's many different ways that we communicate. And so breaking down that consent process allows everybody to understand the situation. Because to you, jumping into bed might mean jumping in for a cuddle, going to watch a movie. Another person might think that jumping into bed might mean having sex with them. These things need to be considered before getting into that bed with the person, and the consent process allows you guys to get there safely. So how do we intervene? So intervening is something that I would hope that we could all do for our friends, family, the people that we care about, because anyone can get in a situation that they aren't comfortable in, or get out of control quite quickly. So I think that obviously caring about the people in your life is the first step. So when you're going out with your girlfriends, your boyfriends, whoever, your cousins, your sister, your mum, whoever you're going with, care about the friends in your group. So when you get to the gathering, make that plan. Are we going to meet back here at a certain time? Are you going to hang out together? Is there a buddy system? Are you all just going to sit at the same table? How are you responsible for the other people that you've turned up to that gathering with? Be aware of where they are and what they're doing for that time, because you have decided to go with them after all. And so why wouldn't you keep them safe by caring enough to know what they're up to while you guys are at an event? Taking responsibility for everyone in your community is another big thing. I see big families a lot, for example, where there's a quiet kid, and that quiet kid goes through the same as every other kid in that family, every outspoken kid, but they do it quietly. Often they can get forgotten about. Maybe somebody has seen that and they've been preyed on. The drunk girl at the party, your friend that only takes 2 drinks to absolutely be off her tits. That's okay. That's her. Just be aware of your community. Know that Sarah isn't very good when she drinks, but she does want to have a couple of drinks. So you're going to hang out with her tonight, and you're going to watch that she only has a couple of drinks. Be safe, responsible for all of your community. And then, of course, stepping in. We all know that we've sort of how we'd expect to be helped, and when we were in our hour of need. But human nature is to turn a blind eye, to turn away, to try and avoid it, to try and not get involved, for many reasons. Most is judgment, and that's fair enough. But if you can stick up for a friend, if only in this circumstance, you're doing great. I've seen many a times. I grew up in a town where there was a lot of fights that happened, just out after town, out after parties, that kind of thing. And people would just walk on past, not help the person that was clearly outnumbered or being treated unfairly. And it's how our communities become more and more distant, and how they become more unsafe. When you have, it's been proven that those kids, during COVID, we've had bigger issues with kids getting snatched, that kind of thing, because those things have been taken out that were put in place. Their sports practices, their doctor's visits, their dentist visits, their after school program. All these things aren't running at the moment due to COVID. So these kids are getting lost in between the school to the after school care to the sports practice. And that can happen with friends and family in intimate situations, or abusive relationships in general. So if you find that you have that person in your life that isn't that great at sticking up for themselves, do it for them. Make sure that you're there to intervene, and that you're communicating with them so that you know when you need to intervene for them as well. That goes for online, bullying, harassment, sexual harassment, that kind of thing online, grooming. If you think that somebody's being harassed online, don't just say, oh, just block them or anything like that. Actually take the steps with them to maybe get some firewalls put in place. Talk to the local police officer, report a page that has been harassing them, that kind of thing. It's just as detrimental being sexually harassed online as it is in person. It goes unnoticed a lot more online, and so it is very important that we are aware that people can be sexually hassled online as well, and that they may need help with consent online too. So that's our process of consent. So I've got that 4-step process: how to intervene, how to stay safe, and why consent is important. I will be putting up a blog on my website just with those points on the Sex Ed page. So you just go straight to my Sex Ed heading, click on that, and then there'll be a little bit of information on consent and why it's so important in our communities. So if you prefer like a hard copy, you're more than welcome to go there. So it's www.zaniaoldham.com and under Sex Ed title. So next week we'll have another episode on Monday. Hopefully we won't have technical difficulties, aka Zania deleting her shit, and it'll be up on Monday at 7 o'clock. So that's when I aim to put each episode up, as Monday 7 p.m, just so that you've got the whole week to watch that and to get back with any feedback, questions, that kind of stuff. So you're more than welcome to still send me in different topics that you'd like to see. I've had so many messages, so if I haven't replied to you, I am sorry, but I'm just trying to get through them all. And I will be putting up my topic during the week for next week, what we'll be talking about. So thanks everyone for coming to episode 2. I'm so happy to have finally shared it with you and to really get that ball rolling on the Sex Ed conversations that we're going to be having, and what I hope this place to sort of be. So yeah, thanks for coming. You can now search me, Sex Ed by Zan, and I will see you next week.